But to be fair, a good deal of the other party's opposition to our agenda has also been rooted in their sincere and fundamental belief about the role of government. It's a belief that government has little or no role to play in helping this nation meet our collective challenges. It's an agenda that basically offers two answers to every problem we face. More tax breaks for the wealthy and fewer rules for corporations. The last administration called this recycled idea the ownership society. But what it essentially means is that everyone is on their own. No matter how hard you work, if your paycheck isn't enough to pay for college or health care or child care, well, you're on your own. If misfortune causes you to lose your job or your home, you're on your own. And if you're a Wall Street bank or an insurance company or an oil company, you pretty much get to play by your own rules, regardless of the consequences for everybody else. Now, I've never believed that government has all the answers. Government cannot and should not replace businesses as the true engine of growth and job creation. Government can't instill good values and a sense of responsibility in our children. That's a parent's job. Too much government can deprive us of choice and burden us with debt. Poorly designed regulations can choke off competition and the capital that businesses need to thrive. I understand these arguments. And it's reflected in my policies. After all, 1/3 of the Recovery Act we designed was made up of tax cuts for families and small businesses. And when you think back to the healthcare debate, despite calls for a single payer government-run healthcare plan, we passed reform that maintains our system of private health insurance. But I also understand that throughout our nation's history, we have balanced the threat of overreaching government against the dangers of an unfettered market. We've provided a basic safety net, because any one of us might experience hardship at some time in our lives and may need some help getting back on our feet. And we've recognized that there have been times when only government has been able to do what individuals couldn't do and corporations wouldn't do. That's how we have railroads and highways, public schools, and police forces. That's how we've made possible scientific research that has led to medical breakthroughs like the vaccine for hepatitis B, and technological wonders like GPS. That's how we have Social Security and a minimum wage. And laws to protect the food we eat and the water we drink and the air that we breathe. That's how we have rules to ensure that minds are safe and yes, that oil companies pay for the spills that they cause. Now, there have always been those who've said no to such protections, no to such investments. There were accusations that Social Security would lead to socialism, and that Medicare was a government takeover. There were bankers who claimed the creation of federal deposit insurance would destroy the industry. And there were automakers who argued that installing seat belts was unnecessary and unaffordable. There were skeptics who thought that cleaning our water and our air would bankrupt our entire economy. And all of these claims proved false. All of these reforms led to greater security and greater prosperity for our people and our economy. So what was true then is true today. As November approaches, leaders in the other party will campaign. Furiously on the same economic arguments they've been making for decades. Fortunately, we don't have to look back too many years to see how their agenda turns out. For much of the last 10 years we've tried it their way. They gave us tax cuts that weren't paid for to millionaires who didn't need them. They gutted regulations and put industry insiders in charge of industry oversight. They shortchanged investments in clean energy and education, in research and technology. And despite all their current moralizing about the need to curb spending, this is the same crowd who took the record $237 billion surplus that President Clinton left them and turned it into a record $1.3 trillion deficit. So we know where those ideas lead us. And now we have a choice as a nation. We can return to the failed economic policies of the past, or we can keep building a stronger future. We can go backward, or we can keep moving forward. And I don't know about you. But I want to move forward. I think America wants to move forward. Now, the first step in building a new foundation that allows us to move forward. has been to address the costs and risks that have made our economy less competitive. Outdated regulations. Crushing healthcare costs, and a growing debt. To start with, we can't compete as a nation if the irresponsibility of a few folks on Wall Street can bring our entire economy to its knees. That's why we're on the verge of passing the most sweeping financial reform since the Great Depression. It's a reform that will help prevent another AIG. It will end taxpayer-funded bank bailouts. It contains the strongest consumer protections in history, protections that will empower Americans with the clear and concise information they need before signing up for a credit card or taking out a mortgage. Financial reform will not guard against every instance of greed and irresponsibility on Wall Street. But it will enshrine a new principle in our financial system, from now on. Instead of competing to see who can come up with the cleverest scheme to make the quickest buck. Financial institutions will compete to see who can make the better product and the better service. And that's a competition that benefits Wall Street and Main Street. That's why we need to get this legislation done. It's why we can't afford to go back, we have to move forward. We also know we can't compete in a global economy if our citizens are forced to spend more, and more of their income on medical bills, if our businesses are forced to choose between healthcare and hiring. If state and federal budgets are weighed down with skyrocketing healthcare costs. That's why we finally passed health insurance reform. Now, let's be clear. The costs of healthcare are not going to come down overnight just because legislation passed. And in an ever-changing industry like healthcare, we're going to continuously need to apply more cost-cutting measures as the years go by. But once this reform is in full effect, middle-class families will pay less for their health care. And the worst practices of the insurance industry will end. People with pre-existing medical conditions will no longer be excluded from coverage. People who become seriously ill will no longer be thrown off. Their coverage for reasons contrived by the insurance company. Taxpayers will no longer have to pay in the form of higher premiums for trips to the ER by uninsured Americans. Businesses will get help with their healthcare costs. In fact, small businesses are already learning their eligible for tax credits to cover their workers this year. And with less waste and greater efficiency in the system. This reform will do more to bring down the deficit than any step we have taken in more than a decade. The other party has staked their claim this November on repealing these health insurance reforms instead of making them work. They want to go back. We need to move forward. Making healthcare more cost-efficient is critical. Because it's also true that we cannot be competitive as a nation if we remain dragged down by our growing debt. So let me talk about debt just for a second. By the time I took office, we had a one-year deficit of over $1 trillion and projected deficits of $8 trillion over the next decade. Most of this was the result of not paying for two major tax cuts skewed to the wealthy. And a worthy but expensive prescription drug program that wasn't paid for. I always find it interesting that the same people who participated in these decisions are the ones who now charge our administration with fiscal irresponsibility. And the truth is, if I had taken office in ordinary times, I would have liked nothing more than to start bringing down the deficits that they created. But we took office amid a crisis, and the effects of the recession put a $3 trillion hole in our budget before I even walked through the door. Additionally, the steps that we had to take to save the economy from depression temporarily added more to the deficit by about $1 trillion. Of course, if we had spiraled into a depression, our deficits and debt levels would be much worse. Now, the economy is still fragile, so we can't put on the brakes too quickly. We have to do what it takes to ensure a strong recovery. A growing economy will unquestionably improve our fiscal health. As will the steps we take in the short term to put Americans back to work. And that's why I signed a bill that will provide tax cuts for small businesses that hire unemployed workers. That's why I've urged Congress to pass a small business lending fund so that small businesses can get the credit they need to create jobs and grow. That's why I believe it's critical we extend unemployment insurance for several more months. So that Americans who've been laid off through no fault of their own get the support they need. To provide for their families and can maintain their health insurance until they're rehired. And we have to work with state and local governments to make sure they have the resources to prevent the likely layoffs of hundreds of thousands of public school teachers across the country over the next few months.